So I'm doing my end of the month wrap up. I'm going to see if I can fix my Goodreads, because sometimes it irritates me with, like, if I do any updates or anything like that, it'll show like updates, and I'm like, I don't need it. Like, if I updated something in a review, I just need to, like, show me the books, the date read, you know? So, all right. I read not that many books. I tried to, read like a few novellas. I did an audiobook. So the first one, I already talked about this book in my favorites of the year. All the best books I read this year was Butcher and Blackbird. I am going to read more books from this author, Brynne Weaver. I really enjoyed this one, but I would say, like, if you want to hear my full thoughts, definitely check out my best books of 2023. This one is in here. But I did really enjoy that one. Even though I only gave it 4 stars, I still enjoyed it enough to where I'd say it definitely was the best book for 2023. The next one, same thing, Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. Now this one here, I really enjoyed this one. This is what they would consider a clean romance. And this is another one that I felt like was probably the best book I read in 2023. I liked the romance. I was okay with it being a clean romance and having it to where it's like, maybe there's kissing in it, but the main focus of the story was about these people getting to know each other and finding love with each other. I thought it was really sweet. I did really enjoy the story. So this one here, this is I decided in 2024, I want to definitely listen to some more audiobooks, and like books that maybe that were at one time hyped up, or this author's hyped up, that type of thing. I've been wanting to like listen to more authors that I don't normally read, but I figured if I listen to them on audiobook, it might be a little bit better, So I ended up listening to In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. Now, Christina Lauren, I'm not really a big fan of. I never really was a big fan of their work. They're a writing duo. And I will say, like, I'm not really a big fan because all of their romances tend to be more fade to black, romances, where there might be some conversations of like talk of like how he's erect or things like that, or maybe there's like making out and kissing, but there's nothing further than that. I really didn't want to read books like that years ago. I just wasn't a fan. I prefer coitus on page, but I decided to just listen, and kind of go from there and see if I like any of these books that are more fade to black type of thing. So I ended up giving this a 3. I was okay with like it, not going any further than what it did, like it be more fade to black. I was okay with that. So the characters are May and Andrew. And I said, this was okay. I feel like this wasn't much of a Groundhog Day, because that was the whole purpose of the book, is like, she ends up reliving her day over and over and over again. And there really wasn't a lot of days that she really relived. So I definitely didn't feel like it was like an actual Groundhog Day, because if you've seen the movie with like Bill Murray, where he keeps reliving the same day over and over and over and over and over and over. How many times, he gets to the point where he just doesn't care about his life anymore and he wants to self-delete kind of thing, does like all kinds of shit until he finally like wisens up and says, okay, I need to listen to whatever this is telling me and kind of go from there. And he kind of makes himself a better person, because he really was a jackass in the movie. So I said, I felt like this character of May, she figured out the way of things way too quickly. I also felt like there were times May was too immature. I said the ending was cute. So we have like these characters of, all of these characters are like family friends and they kind of get together. So you've got like this family gets together with this family. They're basically, the parents grew up around each other and they were like college friends. And so they all pretty much get together with their families who are now, you know, the children were younger and they've grown and all that stuff. And they still get together for the holidays every year. This year it's different because the one family that owns the cabin, they're deciding that they're going to sell it. So everything kind of shifts. You know, you've got May, who grew up around Andrew and his brother. I think his brother was like Miles or something. I can't remember his brother's name. I didn't write it down. But it was like the younger brother and the older brother. Well, May's always had a crush ever since she was like a teenager on Andrew. But she never thought like he would see her that way, you know, anything other than, you know, like a little sister kind of thing. And so when she starts the day over, at first she's thinking like, you know, this is just crazy, like what's going on kind of thing. And like I said, she kind of figures it out like way too quickly of like what's going on, you know. And then she has a friend who's like an older gentleman that's a friend of the family, and he kind of like, you know, she tells him and he kind of like believes her, like I think way too quickly. It just kind of like, it happened way too quickly of like her figuring things out for me to where she could go and make things better for herself. And then her and Andrew start a like relationship, you know, and all that stuff, and kind of like the complications with that. And I thought it was okay. I thought it was an okay story. But like I said, the whole Groundhog Day thing, I felt like was too easy. Like she figured things out way too easy, you know. And I feel like if you're having to relive the day over again, you obviously made multiple mistakes to where you have to kind of correct those mistakes and kind of put yourself on the correct path in your life, you know. And yeah, there were times I felt like her character was a bit immature. Like she is supposed to be, I think, like her more toward her late 20s, like mid to late 20s, I think. Yeah, I think she was like mid to late 20s. And I just felt like she was like too immature, like mentally, especially like when she was thinking about like Andrew and them kissing and things like that. I was kind of like, girl, you know. I'm like, you know, you need to treat it like more mature than how she was treating it. It was just, it kind of felt like a little too, like the character was immature. And this is something I've kind of found with like at least a couple of like fade to black romances, is that some of the heroines tend to be a little bit immature. And I'm like, why are you so immature? You know? So I'd say that's the thing that kind of like irritated me about May's character. And then like, there was something I thought was kind of weird, and Andrew finds something out that happened like in like a previous day for her. But it wasn't during a time where he was in it, you know, like the Andrew now kind of thing, you know. It was an Andrew then kind of thing. And so he I don't know, was a little bit unreasonable. And I was like, why are you mad at her for something that didn't happen in your timeline and happened in a different timeline? And it's like, why are you mad at her for that? That's kind of stupid, you know? So I was kind of like, you're getting mad at her for something that didn't happen even in the same timeline, you know? It happened at a different time. You know, obviously, clearly that was a mistake that she learned from it. So I was like, why are you being mad at her for that? I just thought that was kind of dumb. And I was like, I was listening to it like, really, dude? I really was like, I don't get the conflict. I don't get why he was mad over that particular thing, you know? It was this dumb mistake she did. And she, like the next morning, her waking up and realizing it was a mistake, you know? Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't get that. You know, why he was so mad. I was like, really? It wasn't even in your timeline, dude. It was on a different timeline. So, yeah, it was just weird. Like I said, I gave it a 3. It was okay. It was okay. But right now I'm listening to the Unhoneymooners, and I'll probably do that in January. I'll talk about that one. But I'm kind of being a little slow with it because right now I'm on vacation, you know, my children are on vacation, so I don't really listen to a lot of audiobooks when my kids are home a lot. I usually do my audiobooks when, like, you know, the kids are at school. I'm able to do like things around the house and stuff like that with, you know, not hearing like mom, 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 you know, kind of thing. So it's easier for me to listen to an audiobook. So the next one, this one here, I gave another 3. It was okay, but I had issues with it. There were things I just wasn't fully invested. And so unfortunately, this one had to be a 3. So I ended up reading Holdfast. This is The Laird's Holdings #1 by Eliza MacArthur. Now she did Soft Flannel Hank, and I loved that book. So she decided to try out her hand at historicals, and it's more of like it took place in like around the 1400s, I think. And so I'll just kind of go into like the whole thing of my review. So we have Una and Laird. His name is Ewan. If you know, like, the actor, there's an actor called Ewan McGregor, and that's the spelling of it. It's E-W-A-N. It's Ewan. So it sounds like you, but it's just, you know, I guess it's the British way of saying it. I don't know, but yeah, it's Ewan. Ewan MacDonald. So Una is a healer, and she leaves the Cameron lands after a year of being handfasted to the horrible Laird Malcolm there. I said she was repeatedly sexually assaulted and abused for that whole year she was with that man. I said she decides to head to the Stewarts. I said it was a family she helped before she got handfasted, because she figured she could stay there instead of with her father. Her father had handfasted her to the Laird Cameron. I said also she wanted to help out Blair, who taught her how to use a bow and arrow. And he was also a friend to her during her horrible time there. And he is the horrible Laird's younger brother. He also gets treated like crap himself, but he can't leave. Otherwise, he feels like, you know, the Laird's going to try to kill him, you know, if he actually leaves the lands. I said while she's traveling, she happens upon Ewan, and he asks her to come with him to his lands. He was actually looking for her, you know, he was looking for a healer. I said because his youngest brother, Colin, got gored by a pig, and he will probably die if he doesn't have a healer to clean his wound. They basically tried to treat it the best they could. His twin sister ended up sewing up the wound, but it got infected. And so obviously he's going to die of an infection, you know, if he doesn't get the wound properly healed. So while Una is treating Colin, she gets to know Ewan, and they fall for each other. It definitely was more of a, you know, they really didn't like each other, especially her. Like, she was more leery about him and wasn't sure if, you know, she could trust him, especially with how she dealt with like her previous, you know, hand fasting, where she was like abused and sexually assaulted like repeatedly throughout the year of, you know, being with that man. So it's the things I wasn't a fan of in this book. I said, to me, there was too many time jumps. There were too many times they jumped ahead 2 months or 4 months, things like that. And I was just like, okay, once I'm okay with, but if you keep doing it repeatedly, it tells me that you really don't have enough of the characters building up that relationship. You know, like, you don't have enough in your writing to build up this relationship for her to kind of like get over her, or not really get over, but like, what's the term I want to use? Like, you don't get over being like repeatedly sexually assaulted. You have a way of living with that trauma. So with her, it's like, I didn't see enough of her living through that trauma for her to get to that point of like another relationship and stuff. So I wasn't a fan of the time jumps. It depends on me, the author who does it. You know, sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't. So too, the characters kept being up and down with each other. There were times I felt that Una was being too unreasonable with Ewan, especially because this is supposed to take place in like the 1400s, I believe. I said, and she felt a little too modern for that time period. Also, there were times that Ewan wasn't properly communicating with Una to explain what his concerns and issues were. Said Una used to use a type of birth control with her last hand fasting, you know, like why would you want to get pregnant with that fucker's, you know, kid? I certainly wouldn't. So she had a way of like taking this, whatever it was, every day, so that way she wasn't getting like pregnant with the Laird Cameron's child, because if she did get pregnant, then she would have been with him forever. So yeah, no thanks. No thanks. No thank you. So I didn't understand why she didn't do it with the current hand fasting, especially because she wasn't sure she wanted to stay with him. She wasn't sure if she wanted to stay with Ewan, you know, after the year was over with. So Ewan ended up hand fasting with her. He wanted to marry her, but she had said no, she didn't want to get married. And so he's like, okay, well then let's do a hand fasting. So you're here for like a year, you're under my protection, that type of thing, and go from there. So she agreed to it because, you know, it would help keep her, obviously her name wouldn't be like turned to mud and all that stuff. Because if you're in a, you know, single man's home for how many months and you're a single lady, you're definitely going to have, you know, people not treating you right, you know, and thinking that you're some kind of like harlot and, you know, all that stuff, you know. So he agrees to hand fast her, but he really wanted to marry her because he started like, he definitely fell first, you know, like he fell first, where he started falling for her. And so it made Una seem irresponsible that she didn't use the same type of stuff that she used with the other Laird. So like her and Ewan were like, you know, going at it like rabbits, and after 4 months she got pregnant. And so I was like, girl, you know, you're very irresponsible to not use that type of stuff, especially when she told him. She had told Ewan, I'm not sure if I want to stay after the year. You know, I don't know how I feel, you know, with like being with you and all that stuff. And I was like, girl, you were smart enough to do it with the other fucker. Why weren't you smart enough to do it with Ewan? You know, and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, you obviously were enjoying your time with Ewan a lot better than with that other person. Like this here, it's like she consented to this. The other one was forced. So, you know. So I felt like with her, I was like, girl, you're very irresponsible. You know of ways to prevent pregnancy. So why wouldn't you have done it with Ewan? It made no sense to me. It made her like seem irresponsible. So within 4 months of her current hand fasting to Ewan, and then, you know, like I said, fucking like rabbits and all that stuff, she got pregnant. So 4, I also felt like the year-long sexual assault and abuse she endured with her former hand fasting was glossed over and quickly forgotten, you know? I said, I just don't see her getting over that quickly. I said, I could see some women not wanting another man to touch them again after all of that abuse. I mean, honestly, if I was in her place and I had to deal with like nightly, you know, forcing, where like there's different types of like forcing sex onto another person. Like obviously there's the whole holding the person down and all that stuff while you're doing what you're doing. But also there's the, if you don't do it, it's going to be harder for you. So you kind of just lay there and let that person just do their thing until it's over with. So I think for the majority, she probably was doing that, where it's like, people were like, oh, well, you consented to it. And I'm like, but not really. You didn't really. It's a form of like manipulation on the man's part of like, well, if I don't do it, then is he going to hurt me in other ways, you know, like physically, and then kind of do other things to make it even worse. So there are times women, you know, if they are, you know, assaulted, you know, sexually, they kind of just lay there and let the person just do their thing, because then they survive. Because there are often times when women, if they fight back, they're killed. So there are women who are victims of assault that, you know, did it in order to survive. So I think for her, it's like, if you're dealing with that for like a whole year, would you want a man touching you after that? You know, I honestly wouldn't, if it was me. I don't know. I think it would probably take a long time for you to want to have somebody like, you know, trust somebody enough to like touch you that way, you know, without like bringing back all this like PTSD of this other person like doing things to you. So I felt like that was kind of glossed over. And like I said, she had said it was nightly visits he would do. Nightly. So you're talking 360, you know, 365 days or within a year. And with all those times, he was coming to her and doing that to her. So for me, it's like, could you honestly gloss over that and get past that quickly? I personally wouldn't. I don't know about anybody else. You know, I know there's some people who would say like that they would rather be with someone else and kind of get over that, you know, kind of like get through their trauma that way. But not everybody works that way. You know, like for me, would I want to like be with another man like quickly afterwards and try to like, oh, have this person like have me forget like that other person existed? No, you're still always going to have those, you know, it's still always going to be here. Like even years after like dealing with my ex, and I would say like there was maybe like an instance or two where I kind of, you know, with him, I was kind of like, just get it over with. If so, I kind of like had that with me. So for me, it's like, is that something that you get over? No. You still think about it to this day. You know, you still think of like, could I have done something differently? You know, to make it to where he didn't do that, you know? So you're kind of like, you blame yourself as like, I was, you know, you kind of think of yourself as weak, you know, like I was weak. I should have fought him, or I should have did this or did that. So to me, it's like, you know, that's not something that is easily you can get over. So like I said, with this, I felt like it was glossed over. And it's like, it's not like it was one incident, you know, and even one incident could be bad enough, you know, but you're talking like repeated essays, you know, repeated sexual assaults. Repeated. That's a tough one. That's a tough one, you know? So number 5, I said this book was a slog to get through. It was a slog to get through. There were times when like, I'm like, it felt so long to me, and I was like, why does this feel so drawn out? You know, where I was like, this is so drawn out, and I was kind of slowly getting through it, and I'm like, I should be reading, like my pace should be quicker than this, you know, to get through this book. It's not like I want to get through a book quickly, but there's a, you know, a certain like pacing where I like in a book where if it's going at a decent pace, I'm like, I'm really enjoying myself throughout the book. And this here, it's like, it definitely had pacing issues where I was like, this is just long to me. It felt very long, very long. I said, I don't know what it was with this book, but it felt so long to me. When I got to the 75 point of the book, I couldn't wait for the book to be over. And, you know, not to be mean toward her, because she is more of a newer author, but it's just, I felt like this one here, they had definitely some pacing issues. So there's different things that were kind of glossed over to get to like that romance and stuff. And there were times like when it came to both of the characters where I kind of was annoyed with different things that both of them would do. Like there was a time when in the book where Ewan wasn't properly explaining his concerns of like her being pregnant, because his mother died in childbirth when he was like 13. So he has those, you know, core memories of losing his mother and like growing up with her. And after his mother died, giving birth to like, I think it was the twin children, his father was like a shell of himself, you know? And so he deeply loved his wife. And so it really kind of like made Ewan more, you know, scarred from that, you know, where he's like, he saw what it did to his father losing his mother, and, you know, him growing up, you know, knowing his mother and then losing her at such a young age, you know, especially when the mortality rate of like women giving birth back years ago was like high, like a higher percentage than it is now. Because, you know, now we have more equipment and things like that to help with, you know, delivering and all that stuff. Like with me, my first child was through C-section. And back in the day, I don't know, I may not have made it through that first birth, you know. But I had a hard time, like, you know, delivering. So that's why they ended up doing a C-section on me with my first child. My second child, I had her what they called VBAC, which is like vaginal birth after cesarean. So I was able to have her naturally. And I would say, like, out of both of those births, I preferred the natural birth because I healed quicker with the natural birth than I did with a C-section. The C-section, it took me longer to feel better. I felt like shit. You know, it's just your gut is cut open and a baby gets pulled out of your gut, and that's not a natural way of delivery because you're going through like all of the abdominal tissue and stuff like that, you know? So for me, it's like back in that day, I probably would have died in childbirth. So for me, it's like, you know, for Ewan, you know, having that trauma of like knowing his mother died in childbirth, he has that, you know, responsibility of like taking care of his like younger siblings and stuff like that. So Colin, you know, when he got injured, he very much like blamed himself, you know, of like Ewan blamed himself, like he was trying to impress his older brother, you know, Colin's trying to impress his older brother by, you know, going throughout the hunt and, you know, trying to kill that, like this, you know, these boars and all that stuff, which are basically like a type of pig. But, you know, they could tear your ass open, you know. Those types of animals can tear your ass open. So they're very dangerous. So for me, it's like I felt like Ewan had all this like responsibility on his shoulders, and so he wasn't like giving Una that, like he wasn't telling her his fears of like hoping that she wasn't going to die in childbirth and all that stuff, because it was making their relationship kind of like splinter apart, you know. And so she was getting mad at him not communicating with her to the point where she had left the land area and got kidnapped. And so I was kind of like, dude, if you just communicated with her and told her your fears, saying, I would prefer if you stayed in because, you know, Cameron's after you, he's trying to get you and all that stuff, it would have been better, you know. But then there was this whole kidnapping. So, I mean, the author said she was trying to do this book as more of like a like honoring the past books she read years ago, where it was like, you know, like Julie Garwood books or things like that, you know, where it had more of a Highland type of books with different things that were going on, you know, definitely more problematic type of content, you know, today than it was maybe like 20 or 30 years ago of it being written. So yeah, I mean, I could understand the author's reasoning behind it, but I also was like, it wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't, ultimately, it just really wasn't an enjoyable book, you know, and so that's why I ended up having to give it like 3 stars, because I'm like, it just had issues in it I just wasn't a fan of. Like, I can justify an author 30 years ago when she did the book. So 30 years, you know, 30, like 20 or 30 years go by, and I'm like, okay, I can understand why this author wrote it the way she did during that time frame. But now it's like, you're in a different era, a different time frame. So not everybody's going to appreciate this book, like, that have modern sensibilities. So that's why I ultimately ended up giving it a 3, because I could have lowered it. I could have gave it like a really bad rating, but I was like, no, I'm going to give it a 3, because I understand where she was coming from, the author, of why she wrote it the way she did. But I also I really didn't enjoy it. I'll just say that. I just wasn't a fan. But I will say, like, the second book, if she does do a second book that has the Laird Cameron's brother Blair in it, because there was like definitely hintings of like 2 characters that possibly could get together in a second book, I would read that, because I did want to see Blair get a romantic relationship with, you know, someone, because he seemed like a good person. He just had a shit ass brother, you know, the Laird Cameron who abused her, you know. So the next book I ended up reading was Highway Holiday. This is by Lainey Lane. It's definitely a new to me author. It's supposed to be a big, beautiful woman, Christmas novella. So she's obviously full-figured, and he's more of a skinnier dude. So she's black, and I'm pretty sure he's a white guy. Yeah, he's like a white guy. So she is like the video person. She works with this band. And she does all the videoing stuff and different things like that. And I'm assuming the photography too and all that. And so she decides she's going to, you know, they're all going on their like Christmas break. And so she is going to be heading to, where was it again? It was I can't remember what state. I can't remember what state it was. But she was heading to this state to go spend time with her family. And he doesn't really have a great relationship with his family. Like, I guess you'd say, was definitely more abandoned, like, you know, mentally throughout the years of like his family. So he doesn't really have a great relationship with them. So he wasn't planning on going home to visit any of his, you know, family. So she's like, well, you know, I'm going to go, and, you know, I hope you, you know, she's kind of like, I hope you have a, you know, good time, you know, on your own. And so he basically is like, oh, well, I'll drive you. We'll drive in the van, you know. So they basically go and do this like a little road trip to get to her state. And while they're going there, they get kind of like snowed in a little bit. And then so their feelings kind of like for each other come out. So, yeah, I gave this a 3. So it's like Briella and Finley, whatever it is. So this was okay. Super quick holiday novella. I said, I really wish I could have gotten to know the characters a little bit better. I said, also, they moved very quickly to sleeping with each other. I said, I know it's a novella, but even in a novella, I like a good pacing to the story, even though I know it's only going to be maybe like 100 pages or so, maybe 200 pages. But I like the pace to be good, where it's like they quickly, like, you know, went from like kissing. And then when, you know, he finally dropped her off at like her house, they go up to her room and like banging out, you know, and I'm just like, like, I don't know. I'm the type of person where it's like, if I know my boyfriend or my husband's like parents are like in the house, I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I don't want to. I don't want, like, I don't want his parents to, like, accidentally hear me or whatever it is, you know? So I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. No, no, we wait till afterwards. So for me, I was kind of like, you know, and her parents were kind of like, oh, yeah, you could sleep in her room. And I was like, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm more old school, but I don't think I would want to be that type of parent knowing my child's in the house banging it out with someone else. I'd be like, no, you're going to do that in the privacy of your own place, and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know about it. La, 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 you know? So no, it wouldn't be that type of thing, you know? So it was okay, but I felt like the author's writing was definitely more amateur, you know, like more newer. Definitely needed to get better at like descriptions and keeping the story pace and all this different stuff. There are things I'm always looking for when it comes to a book, and this here felt very flat to me. So I definitely feel like the author needs to improve on their writing and different things like that. So some authors have a way of like immersing you into the story. This here was like, it definitely was more amateur, you know, with writing and all that stuff. So yeah, I really was hoping for it to be a little bit better. And like I said, I gave it a 3. It was okay, but it could have been better. So the last one I ended up reading is Kate Bateman. This is another novella. This is Orchids and Mistletoe. I've had this book since like last year. So I ended up giving this a 5-star. I really enjoyed this one. It has Kit and Emma. Now, Kit is best friends with Emma's brother. And so it's basically like, you know, they've known each other for how many years? It is a closed-door novella. They tease you with a lot of heat, but it doesn't go anywhere. So if you're like, you know, you wanting to see the P and the V, you're not going to see that in this one here. It definitely ended on like where they were going to go to a bedroom and then it closed the door. And I was like, a little disappointed, but, you know, I was okay with it. I still was okay with it. I'm like, okay, you know, it's all right. I still enjoyed the book. So we have Kit. Christopher has been attracted to Emma, his best friend's little sister, for years. Sorry. For 6 months, he was imprisoned with his best friend as prisoners of war. And unfortunately, Andrew got sick. I said before he passed away, he gave Kit a locket to give back to Emma. Emma had given her brother this locket as like, maybe like a good luck thing, good luck charm, you know, letting him know like his family loves him and, you know, they're hoping that he comes back, you know, safe and sound and all that stuff. So Emma is a botanist who is trying to get her discoveries noticed. I said, unfortunately for her, she is a woman and isn't allowed in the club. There's like this botanist club where you can go and show off your discoveries. And because, of course, she's a woman and it was more of a gentleman's kind of club thing, she wasn't allowed in there to show her discoveries and all that stuff. So Christopher, you know, Kit, ended up helping her with that. So that way her orchids could get discovered for the fact that she named them after her brother. So after Kit gives her back her locket, she enlists the help of Kit to help her keep her orchids alive. So he has like essentially like a hothouse on his property, and so she needs like a good temperature to keep them alive, otherwise they're going to die and all that stuff. Orchids are very like temperamental and all that stuff. So they end up taking her orchids to his hothouse, and there were scenes of him having like this hothouse like bath area where you can go in and like take a bath and like really relax yourself and stuff like that. Kind of remind me of like, it's like a spa essentially. He had like a hot springs and all that. And so there were scenes where, you know, they were naked, you know, not with each other, but they were naked, you know, so they seen each other's naughty bits and stuff. And so you're thinking like, oh, it's probably going to go to there. And it doesn't. I'll just say it doesn't, unfortunately. So I said this was sexy, but I said some may be disappointed in this because there aren't any sexy times in the novella. I said honestly I would have enjoyed those as well, but I still had a good time with this novella. I said there is making out and nude bodies, just no naked bodies joined together. So, I like I said, I still enjoyed it because you got like where he's been attracted to her for years, and she always thought he was a tease, but she also liked him as well. And so you got like their coming together kind of thing. And like I said, if you enjoy, sex on page, you're not going to get that with this, because it does tend to like, it gives you some making out, it gives you them kissing, and then him saying like, come to my bedroom kind of thing, and then it just closes the door. So, there was another person that I follow that was disappointed in the story because there was no dang it. Sorry about that. Because there was no intimacy on page. But you know what? I was still okay with it. I still enjoyed the story. I could just use my imagination, So that's basically what I did with it. It's like at the end, I was like, ah. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use my imagination and I'm going to pretend because I've read enough books with sex on page where, I have a pretty good imagination and can, and can picture like what's gonna be happening in that bedroom. So I'm okay with that. So I would say like overall there was at least like 3 books that I read this month that were either Fade to Black or clean, and I was okay with those. Like I definitely am trying to do more experimenting in 2024 of opening myself up to more books where maybe the sex is not like gratuitous or whatever it is on page, because I'm getting to that point where I really don't want to read a book with sex just being sex on page, and there's really no buildup of like a relationship. To me, it's just very shallow, to go and just have sex. And I'm like, but what else do these characters have? Like there are some books that I read where I'm like, I don't see this couple like lasting past the point of like once they get tired of each other having sex, like what else do you have, like there's this old comedian, Patrice O'Neill, who passed away years ago, and I always thought he was funny, but he really triggered a lot of women. Because there was one question he asked in like his comedy special. He said, if you didn't have like, say something happened to where you couldn't have sex with your boyfriend or husband anymore, what else would you do besides that? And so women were like, oh, like, you can go anally. Oh, you can bring a woman into the relationship. And he's like, but none of you said like, learn to play Xbox, do this or that. And I'm like, women may take offense to that joke, but I'm like, I understood where he was coming from. It's like, sex isn't the only thing in your relationship that should matter. Is sex good with the right person? Absolutely. But there are other things that need to go in your relationship besides the getting together, the P and the V, or maybe even the P and the A, or the P and the M, You know what I mean by P and M, oral stimulation, that type of thing. So there are other things besides that. And I think there's a lot of young people when you're in your 20s, you're only really thinking about like sex and the amount of partners you have and things like that, and learning and all that stuff. And that's fine, but like when you get older, your sex drive goes down. It does, your sex drive goes down. You get to where you're not really like wanting that type of thing anymore, like, but not a lot of it, like maybe like every now and again, but when you get to a certain point, you want other things. Like you want to do stuff with your with your partner besides that, you know, like go to the movies, go to a restaurant, have conversations, you know, have like intimacy that doesn't include sex, you know, like there's other different forms of intimacy, you know. And so for me, it's like I'm reading a novel. I want to see that intimacy that isn't just sex on page. You know, I need to see that relationship grow where you're like, oh my God, this couple is just so beautiful. You could see them being with each other for the rest of their lives. And in today's society, it's like, whose partner can I go to next? Who can, you know, whose DICK can I jump on next? And to me, I'm like, that isn't a sustainable thing. You will regret the amount of partners you had as you get older. And you have like society today that's like, oh, well, go and like have as many partners as you want. And I'm like, you know, believe me, you will regret those decisions you made when you were young and you were stupid. You thought you were smart in your 20s, and then you get in your 40s, you realize how wrong you were, you know. So for me, it's like, I want to see that build up, that intimacy, you know, on page of these characters, their feelings for each other, that building up. I don't want to read hookup books. I want to read romances where I see that this person would die for that other person. Could you honestly say in your 20s, with all the hookup partners you had, that you would die for these people? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. And so I want to see people where it's like that person would die for that other person, and that other person would be like, no, you know, you're not doing that, you know, because I love you too much to see you hurt yourself for me. So that's the love I want to see. That's the passion I want to see, you know. And so if I read more books that have more, you know, not sex on page and all that stuff, but it does have a romance, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. I want that. So anyways, a lot of talking in this video, but I want to get my points across. It just, you know, different things I've been seeing lately where it makes it to where you don't enjoy romance, you know, because everybody just like, oh, this is all the sex scenes in this book. And I'm like, I want something more. I want something more. You know, sex it's quick, it's over, it's, you know, like 5 minutes or less, you know, maybe even 10 or 20, but if you're lucky. But honestly, it's like, you know, there was a quoting the movie Grease where it's like, you know, is that all it takes in sex, like 15 minutes? And it's like, what else do you do for like the rest of the day? And so it's true. It's like, if you don't have anything else in your relationship besides sex, that relationship is not going to last that long. If that's all you have with each other is sex, because this person's just going to move on to someone else who they could do that with, you know, and possibly even better, you know. So yeah, for me, it's like, I want that romance. So in 2024, that's what I'm going to be searching for, is more romance, less, you know, intimacy and all that stuff, and less like the couple, like, you know, all these different positions and all that stuff. I'm just like, I don't care. I've read enough over the years to where I'm like, okay, yeah, I've read enough sex where I'm like, I enjoy this, but where's the romance? I need that romance. In order for me to keep reading this genre, I need romance. If that you're not going to give me that, then I'm going to read something else that I find enjoyment in. So that's it for this one here. I'm going to see, because, you know, all the stuff that's going on with my apartment, I don't know if I'm going to be able to film anything in like a few days or so. But, you know, this is the whole thing of like why I've been wanting to slow down my videos and stuff like that too. Different things that are happening, like, you know, with my life, you know, busy with other things and all that stuff. So this is why I wanted to slow down my doing videos every week and all that stuff. But yeah, that's it for this one here. Did you read anything this month that you really enjoyed? Let me know down below. Are there any like clean or fade to black romances that you've really enjoyed this year in 2023? If you have any suggestions, leave them down below. I will definitely take recommendations if you have any. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I will say, you know, Happy New Year. And I'm hoping that we have a great 2024. We will see what happens. But yeah, take care of yourselves. And I'll talk to you on the next video. All right. Bye.